Hello, I am Mystic Orange and this is video hashtag 645. In this video, I'll be reviewing and discussing 16 season 1 episode 17. It's called It's Almost Graduate. And since I've been watching this episode yesterday, I don't really understand this title for this episode. But that being said, let's get into this video. So before the intro, we're at Spin This, Wyatt and Jude are hanging out together. But what happens is that whenever Serena comes, Wyatt starts being clumsy and drops things. Like he crushes really hard for Serena. I mean, bro is obsessed with her. Okay, after the first scene, we have the theme song. So this means it's time for an intermission. And for this intermission, I don't have anything big. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying my YouTube videos. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And I would also appreciate if you guys can share your thoughts in the comments. And maybe you guys can give me suggestions on what shows I can review. Let me know what your favorite TV shows are or cartoons. That's all I needed for this intermission today. So thank you for listening. Let's get back into reviewing 16. So after this theme song, Jonesy and Caitlin are at the Lemon. Caitlin brings up her news to Jonesy that she's going to have an interview at Greater Gods of Albatross and Finch. So she's hoping to work there. And she exclaims how it's like the best shop in the mall. And Josie points out that, the staff of Albatross and Finch seem a bit stuck up. But anyway, we find out that Josie has been fired from another job. The job is called Engraved This. He got fired because his spelling sucked. He didn't know how to spell Christmas. It really shows that, Jonesy isn't that smart, and even Caitlin knows how to spell Christmas. Also, judging by the name of the job and what Jonesy has been doing, it makes me think that Engraved This is some kind of like a writing job. Like you have to create like embroidered writing, things like signatures and all that. I imagine this is useful if you're like working in like a gift shop or something, or creating calligraphies. Or if you imagine like gold badges or similar things to that, I imagine this is what this job is about. Anyway, since Jonesy got fired and because of this news, he wants to try out for Albatross and Finch too. But Caitlin thinks Jonesy isn't cut out for it. To be a staff member at Albatross and Finch, you have to be cool, and Caitlin doesn't think Jonesy is cool. I think for me though, like, if you want to be in Albatross and Finch, you kind of have to like have a inflated ego. And to be honest, this kind of fits Jonesy really well. So I don't see what Kanan's point is of like Jonesy not being a clear candidate for Albatross and Finch. Since that's basically what Jonesy is. Even not knowing what happens in this episode, it's pretty clear that like Jonesy would be a cutout candidate for this job. And in the next scene, we have one of my favorite scenes of this episode. It's so funny. Nikki and Jen decide to prank Coach Holder. It is so hilarious. A fake spider pops out from the cash register and it starts scaring him. He starts screaming like a little girl. So funny. In the next part of this scene, we're back at Spin This. Wyatt is trying to, step things up from his, relationship with Serena. Like, he wants to develop, like, a true love between her. But considering that, Serena is way older than Wyatt, he's worried that, Serena is way mature for him, and she wouldn't go out for someone like him who is in like high school or whatever. I mean, not to forget, like, Serena is Wyatt's boss at the same time. So he tries to get help from Jonesy and Jude, for Wyatt, to man up and step up. Wyatt needs to handle his own problems and man up. So he does, attempt to ask, Serena if they could level up the relationship. But, Serena rejects the idea. So it does hurt, when it gets rejected, he gets shut down. But I kind of have to, in my opinion, I kind of respect Serena's wishes. Well, first of all, that's so many expectations put on her, but she has also the right to reject Wyatt. Like, not only Serena is way older than Wyatt, but she is also the boss. And apparently, she's in college. I really don't know how school system works in Canada or USA, but considering how it works in over there, she has she has whole history. Could you imagine being in Serena's shoes and where like a group of teenage boys are coming at you and who wants to ask you out? So not only Wyatt is trying to ask Serena out, as soon as Wyatt gave up, it was Jonesy's turn to, ask her out. But by the way, isn't Josie not with Nicky by now? Oh well. I guess Serena wasn't really into Jonesy. She doesn't think. I don't think they're each other's type anyway. And if we're talking about maturity here, Jones is way too immature for Serena in comparison to Wyatt. Also, Jonesy isn't all that smart. He can't even spell Christmas. And Wyatt's pretty smart in comparison to Jonesy. So I guess Serena just wanted to block out Jonesy and just went after Wyatt anyway. I mean, Serena can always say no, but it does feel like, she was pressured into this. So in the next scene, Jonesy heads off to Albatross and Finch, where he meets Caitlin there. They're heading off to be interviewed. I like that while they're waiting in line, we do get some cameo background characters. And there is a moment where I'm like, I like the scene. We have characters like Kyle and Carson. You remember them? While Kyle used to be Kayla's date in Sushi Connection, and beside him was Carson, the guy who Jen fancied in Five Finger Discount. And I like the scene. It's where Carson tells Kyle, like, his abs are ripped, dude. And I thought that was so cute and wholesome. And yes, I ship them now. While in the line, they also have other characters here too, like Darth. Like he wants to get interviewed at Albatross and Finch. And no offense to Darth, but like knowing that these Albatross and Finch are total snobs and have high image conscious, and they're pretty egotistical, like Jonesy. But knowing that, Darth gets bullied quite a lot for being a dweeb. I mean, we can't forget the time when he got bullied by Christo and Blade, as well as Jonesy himself. So I doubt they're gonna accept Darth instantly. I bet when he's gonna go there, they're just gonna flat out reject him. Anyway, Kaylin practices some facial expressions. And I have to be honest here, it does seem like Caitlyn is trying too hard to impress Rita, Gauze, and Finch. And I feel like, according to them, trying too hard is like considered uncool. It just makes Caitlyn seem desperate to be here, which goes against what they're going for. It makes her seem like a wannabe follower, which is highly uncool in their standards. I think with these interviews at Albatross and Finch, you want to be naturally cool. You're not putting a forced act. You're not trying to cover up that you're not cool. It's like adapting and reading the room. So it does seem like ironic that Caitlyn, earlier tells Jonesy isn't like the perfect image that Albatross and Fish is going for, when clearly she's the one who isn't the perfect image that Albatross and Fish isn't going for. But let's talk about these facial expressions that Caitlyn is doing. The first one she does is a bored smirk. I don't know what Caitlyn thinks she's doing, but to me as a viewer, this looks weird. The second facial expression she does is an aloof stare. So while we're talking about Caitlyn trying too hard, it seems like Caitlyn has been practicing these facial expressions before. And to me, it makes me think like she's been reading about these in like magazines and such. Like back then, these people would read, magazines and tabloids. And obviously, we know, like, Kaylin is the sort of person to do this. Like, must we forget the time where, they try to, shape Jonesy into, like, trying to be a nice guy and trying, like, make him, go out with these girls. So it's kind of hinting at things like that. I mean, this is what they would do back then. Nowadays, people would watch these things in like internet. They would see these things through like Instagram, YouTube, influencers, and I feel like Kaylin, fits that mold. There are even websites, where you can like practice these skills. Even some services like Skillshare, like they help you build these personas. Like I know there's a website called WikiHow, and it basically tells you how to adapt our facial expression, and there are a lot of YouTube channels that try to show you how to do a certain image, like they will give you advice on how to get a girl and everything like that. You have to follow the instructions. It's very interesting. People take these instructions by face value. I mean, there are channels like Psych Do Go, where it's trying, teaches you things. So this kind of tells you what type of a person Caitlyn is. So after Caitlyn, showing the aloof stare, Jonesy really responds to it by saying he really felt that one. But really, did you? I personally can't see what you're seeing, Jonesy. To me, it still feels weird, Kaylin doing these facial expressions. Maybe it's weird because, with this animation, it doesn't hit hard. And then Kaylin does our hoodies in the back sneer. So I guess this is a response to our customer that wants to know where our hoodies are. But I bet if you're a staff at Albatross and Finch, you don't want to directly help the customer. You want to give the do-it-yourself kind of advice to the customers. I guess this is kind of trying to help, customers trying to be more independent and, work for themselves and help themselves out. And I guess, if you're Albatross and Finch, you have a selected few of customers who want to buy your products. You don't let just anyone buying your products. It does make the business seem prestige. It's basically like a high class system. I think for Albatross and Finch and similar jobs to that, you want to know what you're doing so that you appear competent, whether you're a staff or not. And I think the main ethos of Albatross and Finch is to get the income and not to do extra work by helping the customers. You might be surprised, but there are actual shops like that in today's world that kind of resembles Albatross and Finch. And they might not necessarily be a clothing shop. They might be I don't know, a takeaway or somewhere else or a supermarket. It's like having an inner circle in your service. There are flaws on these services because it does feel like these services might discriminate other people. It's because you don't fit that image. As a Bengali, I know this too well. There are a lot of cash and carries that will only serve to like certain selected races. And then Jonesy makes a crucial point. It's just a star. I mean, he speaks the truth. Capitalism, am I right? And somehow the people in the interview got offended by this, which was weird. And then Kanan gives a strange excuse for why Jonesy said that, just to ease everyone else's offense towards this. Jonesy thought it was really creepy for Caitlyn to do that, but it also, reinforces how weird everyone's reaction towards this is. And since these people value Albatross and Finch so much, they must think you're brain damaged to think otherwise. It really enforces how clueless the people in line are. These sort of people believe anything they hear. And honestly, this is how people are like in real life. Which is a shame about this world we live in. Which is my advice to this world. Please develop some critical thinking skills. It will benefit you a lot more. And then Jonesy shows his own facial expressions. He does a I'm hotter than you stare. This was freaky to see. Never do that again, Jonesy. So what Jonesy thought it looked like a I'm hotter than you stare. In Caitlin's perspective, it looks like Jonesy wants to go to the bathroom. That's the facial expression that he gave to her. And honestly, it feels like Jonesy doesn't even want to be here. And, he does want to go to the bathroom. I bet in Jonesy's eyes, this seems really lame and uncool. But he's been in many jobs like this before, so I'm sure he can handle this. You know what? I think it's a crime that we don't get to see the second part of Nikki and Jen pulling a prank on Coach Holder. I can bet you that would be a comedic gold. And how Nikki describes the prank about Coach Holder, it makes me think of a character from SpongeBob called Mr. Crab. You know how, Coach Holder is cheap and Mr. Crab is cheap. You can't have, amazing parallels there. In the next part of the scene, we're back at Albatross and Finch. We have a scene where we get to see Doss being dragged out by Ron the Rent-A-Cop. And I thought this scene was really funny. I especially love Ron's commentary towards this. He tells Doss to have a little bit of dignity, which is funny coming from him. Like he may be a security guard, but even Ron can sense what isn't cool. Honestly, for the first season, Ron has been one of my favorite characters. I just think he's really funny and I like his dry humor. He also doesn't say a lot, but he makes an impact. So anyway, Josie and Kaden goes off to get interviewed. Should the staff be questioning why there's only 2 people in this interview? But anyway, that doesn't matter. And right off the bat, Kaylin shows off her personality. And I don't think it's a good look. Straight away, she is showing that she's excitable and desperate. I can bet you that's a major turnoff for the staff. And even for me. And anyway, Kaylin goes off to show off her amazing facial expressions. I mean that sarcastically, by the way. And I think the Albatross and Finch staff are thinking similar to me. And I feel like I'm gonna speak for them. Kaylin's being a tryhard. She's trying too hard to impress them, and it's not a good look. This makes Kaylin seem tacky. This is basically a wannabe follower would do. It's so cringy, I swear. The point of being a greater god is to be idolized, not to be an idolizer. And I think Caitlyn doesn't get that. And then it's Josie's turn to be interviewed. And what makes him different to Caitlyn is that he's not trying at all. Which is kind of what is the point of being a greater god. It's not to put so much effort in a show. You're just being naturally yourself. And by yourself, you're just using charisma. Which is what Jonesy does here. So you can kind of see from their perspective why they chose Jonesy. Also, the staff of Albatross and Finch are considered to be beautiful. And not to say Caitlyn isn't beautiful, she is. I think Jonesy would be considered beautiful. And not only because he is physically attractive, but he also has that self-confidence and pride. He's basically like a peacock showing off his feathers. Also, you would consider Jonesy as an alpha male. I bet he considers himself as a sex symbol. That's just my honest opinion. And I don't think this is what, Kaylin is about. Yeah, she's about, attractiveness and all that. But she is kind of a person, she spruces herself a bit. I think from a Kayla's persona, she dreams of having a hot guy, having the connection, having a great family, having great kids. That's what she dreams of. And you can see that both of the characters, Kaylin and Jonesy, are both like hoes. Like they're both horish, but they have a different perspective on being horish. This makes me think of our previous episode, like where Caitlyn was dating Kyle, and I remember like comparing Jonesy to Kyle. Like Kyle was a player, and Jonesy is a player. That's why I think of him. And I don't think Caitlyn's the type of person who would date a player, but I think Jonesy would. That's my distinct. And knowing that Jonesy is the only one who's accepted. This causes Caitlin's obsession and desperation go up to 11, to the point where it seems embarrassing for the staff, and you wouldn't want to be seen with her. And the icing on the cake is Darth can empathize with Caitlin here, and I bet for Caitlin, Darth is the last person who I want to empathize with me, and that shows a lot. So in the next scene, we're with Wyatt, Jen, and Nikki, and they're discussing about maturity, and they're kind of like assessing who is the most mature. Honestly, maturity is subjective, and it really depends on the person. It's really hard to rank these things. But I can agree that Jen, Wyatt, and Nikki are probably the mature half of the group. Jonesy, Caitlin, and Jude are definitely not mature. I mean, Caitlin did definitely show her maturity today, especially with her desperation of, trying to be an Albatross of a staff member. And I don't have to explain Jonesy and Jude about their maturity. They're kind of obvious. They have a lot of antics around the mall, making them feel immature. But with Wyatt, Jen, and Nikki, it really depends. And for Nikki, I don't think she's the most mature. When it comes to her job, she's definitely immature. So I don't think she's the most mature of the group. So I don't agree with Jen here. So really, Jen and Wyatt would be considered at least most mature of the group. At least for me, personally. For Jen, she's basically the group's mom. She tries to help, have everyone be put together. She's basically dependable. You can go to her for advice, for help. She helps you whenever she wants to, whether you like it or not, whether you ask for it or not. This was demonstrated in the past a couple of times, especially towards Caitlyn. She's basically like Caitlyn's life coach. And then we have Wyatt, who's pretty calm and measured. He doesn't, follow everyone's antics, especially Jonesy and Jude, who seem to be a bit more chaotic. For the most part, he pretty much thinks before he reacts. For the most part. It is interesting to think about. So basically, Wyatt is beating himself up because, he thinks he's not mature enough for Serena. But in the other hand, he's one of the most mature characters of the group. Honestly, he put a lot of pressure on him, despite being like one of the most mature characters. He asked an advice from Nikki and Jen. Wyatt wants to learn to be more mature so he can, have a successful day with Serena. Also, he thinks. And since Jen and Nikki are considered one of the mature members, they should be a good place to, ask an advice from. But I do not like what advice they give. Nikki suggests that Wyatt asks Caitlyn because, she reads all the magazines. I think that's a pretty poor advice to give. This is something that I've noticed about the show. Caitlyn, for the most part, is given relationship advice, and she's pretty much terrible with relationships. She's not a relationship guru. Like knowing things from the future, she's pretty much terrible. And she's considered one of the more immature members. Why would Wyatt get an advice from her who isn't all that mature? And why would Nikki, suggest Caitlyn for all the magazines? Isn't Nikki not against these magazines? Doesn't she not think like these magazines are exploitive? And it's kind of brainwashing, is telling untruth things. And Caitlyn probably reads these magazines to learn to be more mature, but she's probably not mature herself. And this is kind of similar to being like trying to be cool to the Albatross and Finch. She thinks she's being cool by following these, but at the same time, this just makes her seem fake and desperate. That's what happens when you follow these magazines or similar situations. Like if you're gonna follow like an influencer feedback or something like that, you're not just taking the advice. You're putting a persona that's forced onto you. It it's not naturally coming towards you. So it's not just about learning about being more mature, it's about understanding maturity itself. Like, what does it mean to be mature? It's not just these traits, but the habit of being mature. So I think Caitlin's a bad place to get at an advice from, especially if Wyatt wants to know how to be mature. And honestly, Jen and Nikki were right there. They could have given you advice on how to be mature. In the next scene is pretty hilarious. So Jude is trying to comfort Caitlin, but what it looks like, it looks like he's talking to the lemon. So as Nikki, Jen, and Wyatt walk in, they're kind of disturbed by what they're seeing of Jude, talking to the lemon. But they shouldn't be worried as Jude, explains himself. But we have more funny things in this scene. So while in the lemon, Caitlin's crying, Wyatt, Nikki, Jude, and Jen try to comfort her, and practically it looks like they're talking to the lemon. And Nikki gets suspicious of, people looking at them and probably judging them. She doesn't want people staring at them while they're talking to Caitlin. But what was funny was Nikki's reaction to these judging people. She exclaims, "So what? Like you have never talked to a big giant fruit before?" And I died hysterically. I remember this making me laugh so much as a kid, and this still makes me laugh today. It's about the absurdity of talking to a big giant lemon, like as if this is a normal thing to do. So anyway, Wyatt and Caitlin hide in the bushes to observe a mature couple and to see how a mature couple behave in a natural habitat. So what they do is like observe a grown-up couple. So while observing the couple, they make a first distinction about mature couples. So Caitlin kind of makes a comparison between a person holding hands and, a person wrapping their arms around the partner's waist. So in Caitlin's opinion, if you wrap your arms around a person, that is considered mature. And if you, hold hands, that's not considered mature. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong about holding hands. I think that's pretty cute and innocent. And it should be fine for characters like Wyatt, who are like pretty much like teenagers at this point. So Kayla states that, wrapping your arms around the person means, you're committing to that person. You can take it that way if you like. To me, if a person, kept constantly wrapping their arms around me, to me, it would seem like it's clinginess, possessiveness, controllingness. That's the vibe I would get from the person who keeps wrapping their arms around me. Also, wrapping your arms around a person might not indicate you're being mature. Someone like Jonesy wraps his arms around, girls all the time. And I don't consider Jonesy one of the mature members. Like, remember when I'm saying, like, Jonesy as a whole is a player? He just probably wants to, bang girls. I don't know if that is considered mature. And that definitely doesn't insinuate, Jonesy being committed. Like, given the fact that, he's a player. So we get another comparison, but this time it's between Jude and this male person. So Jude would be considered immature, and the man would be considered mature. I mean, I can agree to that. I mean, I made that distinction. Like, Jude is one of the immature members, and his display of huge outbursts with his skateboarding really showed that. So yes, that confirms that Jude is immature. And I can agree that, the man showing his calm and confident demeanor, that should show that, he is mature. He is not just succumbing to the immaturity, but he does eye roll at the immaturity. To me, I don't think that is considered maturity. To me, I think that just considered judgment. I think about maturity is about being wise and not about judgments. So I think, about being mature is about, letting yourself let loose. You kind of have to let others enjoy themselves and be themselves. You want others to express themselves, and at the same time, as a mature person, you also want to express yourself as well. It's about learning to accept things the way things are. And then why it makes that an important note, the mature male does seem boring. And that's the point of being mature. You don't have to be boring to be mature. Maturity isn't about action, it's a state of mind. So anyway, we're at the third demonstration. They head towards the sushi restaurant where the mature couples are dating each other. And Wyatt points out that they haven't been talking for a long time and it's getting boring. And Caitlin points out that mature couples are comfortable in silence. I guess when you're silent, there's so many things to think about. And I think it should be okay to share your thoughts with the date. And there's being comfortable with silence, and there's sitting in silence. Ultimately, communication is important. And then Caitlin points out a fourth thing. She points out that mature male is going to order a mature food. Caitlin points out that Wyatt should order something like a salad instead of fries. So I'm guessing like she's pointing out that Wyatt needs to order something that's healthy and not something that's like fast food. Or maybe she's trying to say that to avoid greasy or, food that might make a mess. I guess it's important to stay healthy, but you gotta have fun when you're in a date. Just don't buy like a boring old salad. Sometimes you got to live life and have fun. Also, there's so many other options that are equally healthy and might not be as boring as a salad. And Caitlin adds a little bit of an information. The stranger the salad is, the more mature it seems. I don't know what to say to that. And then Wyatt suggests a green salad, and Caitlin says, like, oh, not that mature. So Wyatt can't be too mature? What does that mean? I don't understand the rule about, like, being mature or things you need to do to be mature. And then Wyatt suggests something alternative for our salad. And apparently that's acceptable for Caitlin's standards. Wyatt will listen to Caitlin again. And then Caitlin has a fifth tip. The mature male pays for the food without complaining. I'm sorry, but kind of disagree. In my opinion, both of the couple has to pay for the food. I think it's just equally fair to, for both people to pay for the food. And I think it's possible, like, the partner you're dating could take advantage of this. And I feel like this only fits like people in middle class or like a high class system. I don't think this works for working class systems. Like not many young people or people in working class earn that many money. So why should they have to, pay the full meal? And what if you're someone who's like in a poor background and you're dating someone who's like rich, and you want to date them because you love each other? Why should you expect to pay for the food for the rich person? And does that say that the poor person isn't mature because they can't pay the food? So after Caitlin helps Wyatt out, he goes after to have a date with Serena. And then we have a funny moment. Jude asks Caitlin if helping Wyatt took off her mind of Albatross and Finch. And she ends up crying and runs away. It's so funny, especially from Jude's perspective. I think unironically, he made her remember the situation. And I like Nikki's reaction to this. She just says nice. It's just funny. So anyway, in the next scene, we're back at Albatross and Finch, and we have 16-year-old Jonesy who's working in the shop. He's doing what a greeter girl should do, be naked and get people to draw attention to your shop. In other words, he's being sexualized and he's seducing customers to buy products. So Wyatt and Serena begin the date and they are at a restaurant. Wyatt orders himself like a green salad and a virgin margarita. Well, initially he does order, a real margarita. So basically he was going to order alcohol despite being 16 years old. I want you to know something funny. Serena orders hot dog and fries. There's something that, Caitlin said why should order. Now, isn't that funny? So anyway, Wyatt and Serena head towards the movies and they're watching a film. But according to Wyatt, he wanted Serena to watch a political documentary. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's too intense for our date. even for me. That's not maturity, that's just seriousness. Like, is Wyatt trying to be mature or is he trying to be unfun? I mean, Wyatt should be good at this. Like, remember the time when Wyatt and Jonesy had that double date, and he had a date with these girls. Like, he should know that he should pick the movie that the girl would like. So at this point, he should let Serena choose a movie for them. So Wyatt shouldn't struggle this. So anyway, Wyatt is struggling with his date with Serena, but he tries to get his advice from Jonesy. I think that's just unthinkable decision. Why would you get your advice from Jonesy? He's also one of the characters considered as immature. And obviously that doesn't go down well. And Serena catches Wyatt being weird, and she confronts him about it, and Wyatt explains everything, and Serena really doesn't care about what Wyatt thinks. She prefers what Wyatt says. All Wyatt could have done is just been himself and relax and just enjoy his day with Serena, and that's how they could have solved this whole thing. So in the next scene, we're back at Albatross and Finch, and Caitlyn's getting bullied by the staff. Caitlyn was gonna buy a tube top and a cargo skirt, but apparently she's not allowed to buy that combo. And they don't just let anyone dress like them. But I do see a flaw in this rule. Caitlyn just could have bought like a tube top and a cargo skirt from a different shop. Like, I'm sure Khaki Barn sells those things too. And I'm not sure why Caitlyn is, interested in working there. The uniform seems limited, and I'm sure, like, Caitlyn would want to wear, like, so many outfits. And seeing Caitlyn getting bullied, Josie did not want this at all. So he's, stepped up his heroing game, and, he came to the rescue. This is one of my few moments where I'm like, I do appreciate Jonesy because he does care about his friends, and this is one of his best moments. This is similar to like that time where he was working at a line. Right now, he's sabotaging his own job just to save, Caitlyn's skin. And, that's an admirable trait for Jonesy. And, this makes me appreciate him. And not only that, this is really funny and, exciting as well. You got to love Jonesy sometimes. And this scene is so iconic. I say yes to this. I don't care what anyone else says. This is the best. Josie just flashes out his penis and, butt to everyone in the mall, and he just, humiliates Albatross and Finch, just like how they deserve it. And this was so fun and exciting. And you know what? They deserve it. And so that he gets fired from the job, but who cares? He doesn't want to be there anyway. Honestly, this is a great way to end the things off. So anyway, the episode ends with Wyatt and Serena telling us what they did for the date. And they just told us like they spent in the vomit comet for like 11 times. And that's wild coming from my standards. I mean, I wouldn't do that even if I wanted to. I remember going to roller coasters in my school trips when I was a kid. So, this does bring back memories. So anyway, the review's over. It's time to share my thoughts overall. Just so you know, this review took 3 days to make. And it's time for me to share you my favorite part and my least favorite part of this episode. So my least favorite part of this episode, well, I think for me, that would be is when Wyatt taking advice from Caitlyn and Josie who are considered immature, even by this episode standards. I personally think they're immature, but even this episode indicates who the mature characters are, that being Wyatt, Jen, and Nikki. To me, I think it's weird that Wyatt doesn't take advice from Jen or Nikki, and he takes the advice from, Caitlin and Jonesy, and he ends up with terrible date problems. And additionally, I do feel like, Serena is somewhat, pressured into this. Like, first of all, Wyatt asks her out, and then somehow Jonesy asks her out. In some way, you got to feel like she's feeling pressured. This is why I'm saying, like, Wyatt is probably part of the problem with these relationships. And, I've come to a realization that Serena isn't always that bad. However, it's time to share you my favorite part about this episode. There's so many things to choose from. First of all, there's a lot of humorous moments in this episode. But I think my favorite of this episode is definitely Jonesy, exposing his penis and butt in Albatross and Fish just to get back at the greeter gods. It's proper iconic and it's funny. Yes, this is king behavior. Secondly, I thought Nikki and Jan's shenanigans with Coach Holder was equally funny. Not to mention Ron the Rendercut being funny, just dragging Darth out with his, commentary. So those are my summaries for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know this video was like really long. It's like almost like over 40 minutes, but there was so much thing to say about this episode. So let me know what you think. What's your opinions about this episode? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, and have a lovely day.